Hello guys, welcome to my channel Lucid Fanfic, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Dorms. After all moving in the previous day, the class all got some shut-eye and woke up the next morning, rather nervously. None of them knew how they'd react to one another on the morning. For right now, however, things were going well as Izuku and Sato made breakfast. Inko might be dorm mom, but she was no maid to them. The tie of them crafted a breakfast that would get the laziest person out of bed. The class began arriving from their rooms. Everyone was dressed in at least one article of clothing, thank God, and there was some diversity. Some were in dressing gowns, others rocked up in shorts and shirts, others in pajamas, and Momo was straight up wearing a Victorian-era gown for some reason. Some wore socks, others slippers, and a few just went barefoot. And when it came to hair, oh boy, did some people have some horrendous bedhead. However, none could compare to Eureka, who entered the room half asleep in shorts and a shirt, with hair that looked as though she'd been dragged through a hedge. But that wasn't what caught everyone off guard. Morning you are. Izuku began greeting before his friend's eyes stared into his soul. Go F yourself, and don't talk to me until I've had my coffee. Eureka interrupted in tone of voice that silenced everyone. Clearly, she wasn't a morning person. Izuku was just happy Eri wasn't here to hear what she'd just said. Thankfully, after that, the morning went smoothly, and everyone eventually got dressed eventually. They only had a single heroics class that day, and so the class decided to relax until then. This general routine continued for the next few days as the class all acclimated to living with one another. Eventually, however, they got visitors. Common room. As the class made their way to the common room one morning, they were met by a rather unexpected surprise. Rock on with sparkling gazes, one voice cries out. We've come to lend a paw and help, another continues. We have come from somewhere, one more added. Stingingly cute and cat-like, yet another persisted. Wild pussycats, they all chanted together. It was the WWPC, in their civilian clothes, all together in the common room along with Aizawa and Inko. Tiger, Pixie Bob, Ragdoll, Mandalay, what are you guys doing here? Izuku asked curiously. Well, you see, a certain someone wanted to visit you. Mandalay replied as she shifted to the side to reveal a nervous-looking Kota. Hey big bro Izu. Kota said nervously as he stood awkwardly. Is little Kota nervous about seeing his favorite hero again? Pixie Bob teased, causing Kota to blush angrily. Shut up, Kota stated as he tried to cover her mouth. At this point, Izuku walked up to Kota and leaned down to be at eye level with the boy. It's nice to see you again, Kota, Izuku stated as he gave the boy a pat on the head. You too, Kota replied as he smiled at the affection. So he's the one my son talked about, the boy who lost his parents? Inko asked Mandalay quietly. Yeah, but ever since your son talked to Kota, he's been so much happier. It also probably helps that Izuku beat up the man who killed Kota's parents. Mandalay explained. That certainly does sound like my son, always trying to help people, whilst going a bit overboard. Inko responded with a smile as the cats giggled at that. Having seen Izuku's training techniques, they could certainly attest his tendency to go overboard. As the adults all bantered, the last few class members entered the room, along with a certain uniform girl. Hey guys, what's going on? Shoji asked as he entered the room, with Eri on his shoulder. Recently she'd taken a liking to riding on the gentle giant's shoulders, and he was too nice to deny her that experience. The WWPC are here to visit, Ojiro explained as Shoji and Eri looked at them. WWPC? Eri asked with a cute, curious face. Wild pussycats. They're a hero team of 4 cat-themed heroes. Ojiro explained to Eri as she listened with an enraptured look. That sounds cool, she replied with a look of adorable amazement on her face. How has Midoriya not died from his cuteness yet? Ojiro asked himself as he saw Eri's face light up. Then, she saw Kota. Who's that? She asked. A nephew of one of the cats. Shoji replied. Nephew? Eri asked. A nephew is the child of a sibling. If your mom had a sibling, you would be their nephew, or niece technically since you're a girl. Shoji explained. Can I say hi? She asked. Of course, Shoji stated as he hoisted Eri off his shoulder to let her meet the young boy. She walked up to the boy who her big brother seemed to be familiar with. Hi, I'm Eri. She introduced herself and the cats all immediately fawned over her. Oh my gosh, Who is little cutie? Pixie Bob asked as she leant down to greet Airy. This is my little sister Airy. Airy, this is Mandalay, Tiger, Ragdoll, and Pixie Bob, the wild pussycats. Izuku introduced the two to each other. Hello, it's nice to meet you. Airy greeted, and the cats all immediately made a subconscious vow to protect this adorable little girl they'd just met. And this little tyke is Koda. Izuku continued as he gave Koda another pat on the head. Hi, I'm Koda. He introduced himself. I'm Airy, it's nice to meet you. Uncle Aji said you're one of the cat's nephews. Is that true? Airy replied as she asked a question. Yeah, Mandalay is my Annie, and she's pretty cool. Koda replied with a smile as Mandalay beamed. Okay, where are your parents then? Airy asked in naive curiousness, immediately causing the cats to look wittingly at Koda. They died fighting a monster. So I live with my Annie now. Koda replied sadly. Oh, I'm sorry for asking. My parents didn't want me, and I was given to bad people. Airy explained as the two children felt a kinship between themselves. But then my big brother saved me. Airy continued as her smile reappeared. Really? He saved me too. Koda replied excitedly as his own smile returned. He did? Airy asked. Yeah, he broke that monster muscular's face with his own fist by deflecting the attack with his leg. It was all like whoosh, and then a crunch when Muscular punched himself. Koda explained in an excited manner with a smile as he tried to mimic Izuku's movements but failed to hold his balance. That sounds so cool. Aiza did the same to Overhaul with Miss Maruko. They beat him up a bunch, and I heard a lot of crunchy noises. Airy revealed as she did air punches whilst the class listened to the two kids bond over Izuku beating up their demons. Should we be worried? Jiro asked Momo. I'm not entirely sure. Momo replied quietly. What a wholesome scene. Two children bonding over you breaking faces. How sweet. Mina teased, as Izuku blushed at his actions. Are you sure you're a good influence on them? Mandalay asked Izuku with a look of concern. I do the same for my siblings. Sue bluntly interjected, causing everyone to look at her funny. Same. Todoroki added. At this point, everyone had confused looks on their faces, unsure of what to make of the situation. Throat-clearing cough. So why did you guys actually visit us? Izuku asked. Well, the primary reason we visited is currently talking with your sister. Mandalay replied as she pointed at Koda and Airy, who were taking adamantly about how cool Izuku was. Okay, primary reason infers that you had another reason. Izuku pointed out as Ragdoll then stepped forward. Well, you see, the other reason we came was because, well, I never got to complete thank you for saving me from the Nomo. Ragdoll explained awkwardly. Oh yeah, you were unconscious when I rescued you, weren't you? Izuku replied. Well, not exactly. I had a concussion and lost a decent bit of BLD, but I was conscious at the time. Ragdoll explained. But anyway, that's not really important right now. Right now, I must express my full gratitude for saving my life. Ragdoll continued as she bowed in thanks. Ragdoll, Sensei, there's no need to bow. I just did what any hero would do. Izuku replies humbly. I highly doubt manly heroes would have the stomach to tear a person's arm off. She replied with a smile. You saw that? Izuku asked. Somewhat. I saw a blurry image that suddenly filled with red, and faintly heard you talking about taking something back, and flesh golems, or something like that. She explained with a hazy memory. Oh, that, yeah, I just figured that if the guy knew exactly where the Nomu was, they had a hand in turning innocent people into those abominations, so I took one of their hands as recompense for their actions. Izuku replied in a casual manner that didn't fit the subject matter. The room then went quiet for a bit as they absorbed what Izuku just said, and silently agreed that he'd done the right thing. So what you guys doing in heroics class today? Pixie Bob asked to break the silence. They'll be creating their super lives today. Aizawa replied lazily. Man, I remember doing that years ago. Great fun. Tiger reminisced as he remembered creating his spring tiger punch. Great fun, huh? You mean all the fun you had accidentally punching all our classmates? Pixie Bob asks as Tiger looks away, awkwardly sweating. Well, anyway, creating super moves is an important lesson, so we should be going humph. Tiger swiftly stated, trying to avoid owing up to his past mistakes. What? But I want to watch. Koda states as he hears the adults talking. Now, Koda, don't be selfish. This is a very important lesson for your big bro. Besides, we had the day planned, remember? Mandalay explains. Can we watch big bro Aizu and his friends practice? Please, 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 see? Kota pestered Mandalay, who just looked at Aizawa. No, he stated firmly. Please, Mr. Aizawa. Pretty please? Eri then asked as she looked up at him and used her ultimate secret technique, innocent puppy eyes. It took all of Aizawa's willpower to not immediately capitulate. He'd tried with all his might to resist, but in the end, all things are inevitable. God damn it, why does she have to be so adorable? Aizawa cursed mentally before continuing. Fifiani, you can accompany your big brother and his friends. Aizawa relented. Why Kota and Eri cried out together as they run to put their shoes on. You're in charge of them whilst we're at the USJ. If either of them gets so much as a scratch, I'll expel you. Aizawa threatened Izuku under his breath. I think he might be serious about that. Izuku thinks to himself as he and his class all get ready for training. USJ, after getting changed, the class, the kids, and the WWPC all filed onto the bus and set off for the USJ. When they arrived, they were met by a rather confused ectoplasm who hadn't been informed of the group additions. Aizawa explained the situation to him, and ectoplasm got in a good chuckle at Aizawa's expense over his weakness to Eri. Would like to see you say no to her. Aizawa whispered. That's the difference between you and me. I don't push my luck. Ectoplasm replied as he approached the group. Greetings all. Today you'll be creating your super moves. Techniques normally used as iconic final attacks, but can be used to spice up your combos. Ectoplasm explained as everyone got excited. Now then, as you all should be aware, a super move is a technique many heroes use to catch villains off guard. The technique can be a charged move, a specialized technique, or even a Hail Mary last resort. Ectoplasm continued. Why don't heroes use these moves all the time then? Kirishima asked. A good question. The primary reason a super move isn't used all the time can be fit a number of reasons. The most prominent reason is that it makes the move less special and more predictable to villains. Another reason might be that the move is rather dangerous to use in certain situations, such as in a crowded city or a collapsing building. Lastly, the technique might just be exhausting to pull off. For example, if Endeavor used his prominence burn continuously, he'd likely incinerate himself with the heat. Another example. I can make a giant clone, but that takes a considerable amount of concentration and effort to maintain. In fact, in recent memory, only All Might has been able to consistently pull off his super moves. Ectoplasm elaborated. So, in essence, a super move is powerful of a regular technique used only in extreme or specific situations. Momo asked. Precisely, young Yaoyorozu. He replied. Now then, you're all going to be sectioned into yes, young Azui? Ectoplasm continued before stopping as he saw Tsu raise her hand. What about those of yous who already have super moves, like Midoriya? She asked bluntly. You have super moves, big bro? Kota asked excitedly. Of course you. For those of you who already have techniques, make more. Ectoplasm replied in a confused manner. He wasn't used to student already having techniques like this, especially first years. The group then all entered the USJ, and the class was split up each with an ectoplasm clone to aid them. Big brother, can you show us your cool super moves? Eri asked as she and Kota looked at him with smiles. I'd be happy to, Eri. Besides, I've been needing to re-gauge my strength after fighting that monster at Kamino. Izuku replied as he stretched his body. Re-gauge? Does mean you've gotten stronger, big bro? Kota asked in excitement whilst catching both Aizawa and Ectoplasm's attention. We'll have to wait and see. Izuku replied as his teaches pale in fear. Izuku's zone. Eri was excited scratch that she was unbelievably excited she handy seen her bro-brother fight since he fought that scary monster on TV, but she couldn't see him properly on the screen. Now she gets to see him up close with a friend. Wait, if Kota called Aiza big bro, then did that mean hey we're siblings? She'd have to ask Aiza later. You guys ready? Izuku asked as she and Kota stood with the WWPC. Yeah, they replied simultaneously. All right then, here we go. Her brother replied as he took a stance. Whirling wind water stream roaring aura sly ripping fist Izuku cried out as he did some cool hand movements and caused a massive shockwave. The blast of force ripped through the air and caused a massively destructive gust of wind which disintegrated a massive pillar of stone. That was so cool, big bro, Kota shouted out. Big brother is the strongest? She added with a smile. The two of them then ran up to Izuku to praise him, leaving the WWCP utterly bewildered. Holy hell, he's gotten even stronger. But how? Tiger asked as he absorbed what he'd just witnessed. He's evolved again. Aizawa replied, catching the group's attention. Evolve? What's that supposed to mean? I thought he had no quirk. Pixie Bob asked. He was strong before, but this? This is crazy. But, yeah, what do you mean he evolved? Ragdoll added as remembered Izuku saving her. You didn't hear this from me, but somehow, Izuku Midoriya is a bizarre anomaly amongst bizarre anomalies. Whenever he gets injured in any way, be it physical, chemical, or otherwise, his body somehow evolves and adapts at a genetic level to increase its strength and durability, and that's on top of his near-endless developmental potential. We've had Recovery Girl do every genetic test possible, and yet according to all no scientific medical, he's completely quirkless. Heck, he doesn't even have junk DNA for quirks. In essence, he has the body of someone born 200 years ago genetically speaking, and yet has the capacity to grow beyond what quirks can do. Aizawa explained as the group watched Izuku interacts with Kota and Eri. Holy cow! Mandalay replied as they watched Izuku perform more techniques. Water Stream Whirling Wind Cross Fong Dragon Slayer Fist Izuku cried out as he unleashed another super move, much to the uproarious delight of Eri and Kota. Eri POV. Whilst her big bro was doing cool martial arts and making new moves at Aizawa's request, she and Kota decided to watch the Herbothers friends do their cool moves. They saw many cool new techniques, from acid bodies to dark weapons, from lightning bolts, infused punches to laser beams, from sound cannons to fireballs. All kinds of cool attacks, but none as cool as her big brothers. Kota was especially interested in Miss Toki and her cool water control. She create water spikes and launched them at a stone pillar and drilled into it before causing the rock to explode as the water burst out of it. He asked her about her quirk, and she said it was called Aqua Hand, and it let her control water in a certain area. She then demonstrated this by pulling water vapor from the air and condensing it. Apparently, she couldn't control water vapor, but could turn it into liquid. Kota thought that she was really cool and showed her his water gun quirk. She found that rather neat and joked that they could be a cool team. Unknown to Eri, that little joke, along with her big brother's influence on Kota, set the boy on the path to becoming a great hero in his own right. After saying goodbye to Miss Toki, they continued to watch the others do their cool moves. Izuku POV. So now that you've wrecked half the facility, have you managed to gauge your strength? Aizawa asked as Izuku inspected his body. Yeah, I've got a handle on it now. In terms of my old life, I'm around the level of strength I had when I fought Overgrown Rover, maybe a bit higher. Izuku explained. That was that six-eyed dog monster, right? The one that vomited massive fireballs? Aizawa asked as the nightmarish visage of Rover entered his mind. And just after I stopped having nightmares. Aizawa thinks to himself as the monster's visage invaded his mind. Correct. Which means I'm still not strong enough to fight the stronger cadres, or use my ultimate martial arts. Izuku replied. Was Rover really that weak? And what do you mean by ultimate martial arts? Aizawa asked. Rover was by no means weak. Taking into account all the cadres and their various forms, Rover was around in the middle of the rankings in terms of strength when it comes to dragon levels. Izuku explained. When I fought AFO, I assessed him to be weaker than Rover, and I barely managed to beat him. It required I risk my body using a combination of the Awakening Breath and my Monster Calamity Godslayer Fist, two techniques that require an exceptionally strong body. Izuku continued. You're saying your boy isn't exceptionally strong? How is that possible? From what I've seen, you're the strongest person in Japan right now, maybe even the world. Aizawa asked. Thanks for the compliment, sensei. But unfortunately, when I fought AFO, I got injured a lot, and by the time I busted of the Godslayer style and breath technique, I was rather beat up. In all honesty, it's a miracle I didn't die from the strain. Izuku explained. Okay, first, we're talking about that with your mother later. Second, can you use the techniques now? Aizawa asked, causing Izuku to think. My body still isn't currently up to par to maximize the potential of the Monster Calamity Godslayer Fist. Though I should be able to use its techniques at a lower level, or I'll just end up ripping myself apart. This can go either way. Izuku thinks to himself as he stretches to prepare himself. Can you call over ectoplasm and have him make a few clones? Seeing the exits these techniques have on living subjects will give me a better idea of their power than if I were to use them on rocks. Izuku requested, and Aizawa agreed. Ectoplasm was called over and told Ti made a few clones for Izuku, which he gladly did so. You may attack with whatever technique you wish. The ectoplasmic clone stated. Alright then, let's try this one. Godslayer. Instant attack, Izuku announced as he moved at incredible speeds and punched the clone with enough force to tear a hole through its chest. The clone then dissipated. Impressive. Got any more Godslayer techniques? Ectoplasm asked as he hid his fear of the young man's strength. Yes, actually a few. Izuku replied with a half-truth. In all honesty, I only really created about 3 techniques for the Godslayer whilst I fought Saitama, and one of them I can't do since it needed 4 arms. Guess I'll have to make a few up. Izuku thinks to himself as a line of 5 clones stood before him. Godslayer. Ascending attack, Izuku cried out as he swiftly kicked one of the clones into the USJ's roof. The other comes gawked at the attack, only to be on the receiving end of more techniques. Godslayer. Palm explosion, Izuku declared as he used a palm strike on the clone, and a shockwave rippled throughout its body, causing it vomited up its own ectoplasmic substance, causing it to keel over and dissolve. Godslayer. Azura Rush, Izuku proclaimed as he unleashed a barrage of punches that homaged Saitama's consecutive normal punches of its speed, made it seem as though Izuku had a dozen arms, and blew the clone to bits as it disintegrated. Godslayer. Guillotine hand, Izuku articulated as he cleaned another clone down the middle with a karate chop. Godslayer. Ultimate combination, Izuku enunciated as he unleashed a combination attack of kicks and punches that brutalized the clone. Well, that was. Ectoplasm began, but couldn't find the right word. Horrific, traumatizing, ruthless, utterly terrifying? Aizawa asked. All of the above. Ectoplasm admitted as he processed what he just witnessed. Definitely need to work on concentration. I can feel I'm wasting a lot of power. Izuku muttered as he channeled his power. Sir, can I try something new on one of your clones? Izuku asked Ectoplasm. Sure. The real Ecto replies as he had a clone approach Izuku. Alright, here goes nothing. Izuku says as he puts his fist in front of the clone's forehead. The class all watched closely to see what Izuku had in store, as their classmate extended his middle finger and tapped the clone of the head. Well, that was as far as the car got before. Splat. Its head popped like an ectoplasmic water balloon. SHD. Definitely need to work on concentration. That was far too much, though it certainly was cool. Izuku frantically stated as he watched the beheaded clone break down. Jesus, problem child. Alright, you got anything else? Aizawa asked in an exacerbated tone. I've got one more to show, though I would suggest you call the class back to avoid injury. Izuku states as Aizawa calls the class and the others to gather up and stand back. It took about 10 minutes, but finally the entire class plus the teachers along with Eri and Koda all backed off to a safe distance. He then took a stance he remembered from when he fought Saitama. The serious punch Saitama used was his strongest attack. It suppressed everything in my arsenal, and had I not been able to match it, IDV immediately died. So now let's see if I can do him proud. Izuku thinks to himself as he remembers Saitama's impossible power. He remembered everything he could about the heroes. Stance and technique, the way his muscles twitched, how he was breathing, the shape of aura. He remembered them all and mimicked them as best he could. Sure, he was nowhere near Saitama's level, and likely wouldn't be for years, but he could certainly try. Izuku planted his feet, pulled back his fist, took a deep breath, called upon all his strength, and threw a punch. Godslayer. Absolute punch, he cried out as a truly, tremendously, incomprehensibly massive quantity of kinetic energy flew from his fist and punched a massive hole through the USJ's ceiling. Jesus Christ, problem child, you are aware that these super moves are meant to be non-lethal, right? Aizawa expressed angrily as he mentally recovered from what he'd just seen. Oh right, kinda forgot about that aspect of it. Guess I'll have to save my Godslayer techniques for the monsters, huh? Izuku replies with a goofy smile. You got that right. I forbid you to use those techniques on anything other than monsters. Do you understand me? Aizawa asserted as he glared at Izuku. Perfectly, sir. Izuku replied. Good. Now then, make some super moves that are non-lethal or you're expelled, Aizawa explained as he huffed and went to go lay down. The next day, after being thoroughly yelled at yesterday by Aizawa for putting a hole in the USJ, Izuku was currently trying to perfect his new non-lethal techniques in a gym room. He'd been inspired by Eri and Koda telling him about all the cool super moves his friends had come up with, and was determined to make his own unique ones. So far, he'd been rather successful. So this is where the strongest in UA's been hiding. A familiar voice states, catching Izuku's attention. "Oh, hi Kendo," he replied. "What do you mean by strongest in UA?" he asked. "After that stunt you pulled at Kamino, a little rumor's been spreading that you're the strongest in the university." Kendo explained with a smile. "Really? Guess I never considered what people would think of me beyond the negatives. Then again, this can also be negative." Izuku mumbled as he looked to Kendo for aid. "Hey man, don't look at me, you're the one who openly revealed how OP you are. I ain't gonna get in the way of the people who want to kick your, but to gain a reputation," Kendo replied. Izuku just fell to his knees with comical tears in his eyes as he realized how busy he was going to get. Thankfully, Kendo changed the subject. "So then, what techniques has the quirkless wonder of 1A come up with then? I'm interested to learn," Kendo asked as Izuku smiled. "Well, this first one you'll probably recognize. After all, you inspire it," Izuku replied as he took a stance that Kendo recognized as an aspect of Big Fist Karate. "Fa Jin Buddhist Palm," Izuku announced as he struck a training dummy and wrenched it from the ground it was attached to. "Holy cow, that was brilliant. Was that my Big Fist Karate you used there?" she asked in excitement. "Yup. I remembered your movement and techniques from back with my fought during the sports festival. I decided to take a few pointers and add a few ingredients of my own," Izuku explained. "That's really cool, dude. Can you, copy any technique you see?" Kendo replies curiously. "Yes, actually. I possess an innate aptitude for martial arts, of which my ability to copy my opponent's techniques is only one aspect," Izuku explained as Kendo got more excited. "Does that mean you can copy fictional martial arts and techniques as well?" she asked. "Yes. In fact, I recently watched a cool show called Yu Yu Hakusho, and one of the main bad guys had a really neat long-range technique," Izuku replied as he took an odd stance and shaped his hand to look as if he were about to flip a coin. "Check this out," he states as he aims at another dummy. "Shockwave bullets," Izuku cried out as he flicked his thumb rapidly, causing condensed shockwaves to pepper the dummy, causing significant damage. "That was awesome," Kendo announced as she was blown away by the technique. "I'll teach it to you later if you want," Izuku offers, and she nods rapidly in acceptance. After that, Izuku showed Kendo a few more techniques, such as his Mortal Blade Arm, a technique in which he used his arm as a blade like Kamakiri. He then showed her his Stalwart Stance, a technique to improve durability and endurance he planned to teach both Kirishima and Tetsu. But after that came the real big news. "You've made a whole new style?" Kendo asked in response to what Izuku had told her. "Kind of. I'm using the framework of my Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist and Whirlwind Iron Cutting Fist, in that they both use technique to manipulate elements using the knowledge of various energies to create a new style I call," Izuku explained as he took a completely new stance. "Dancing Flame Searing Flesh Fist," Izuku cried out as his fist generated a heat haze and punched through a dummy, which then caught fire. "Oh my god, that is so cool, teach me. Teach me. Teach me. Teach me," Kendo begged as Izuku smiled. "How can I say no to my rival in the martial arts?" Izuku replied. HPSC conference room. Meanwhile, as the students of UA are prepping for their exam, the examiners themselves had other things on their mind. The MDM president of the HPSC, Sayaka Kinoshita, had called a meeting to her inner circle within the company to discuss highly important matters of monsters. "So then, is everyone here?" MDM president asked as her cabal all took their seats. "Yeah, ma'am. Everyone is here aside from Toranaka," the head of checks and balances replied. "Why is Toranaka not here?" MDM president asked. "Ma'am, don't you remember? You ordered he be retired last week," the head of marketing explained. "All right, of course. Anyhow, we have some important issues to discuss today. 2 weeks ago, we came into some very startling information. Information that must be addressed," MDM president explained as she dramatically rose from her seat and activated a large monitor behind her. "Tell me, my colleagues, you believe in monsters?" she asked dramatically as she activated the screen to show an autopsy of Wolfram. "Monsters? What are you going on about, ma'am? I know mutant heroes don't sell that well, but feel calling them monsters is a bit excessive," the head of statistical research pointed out. "Not the mutants, you idiot. Actual monsters born from the evils in humanity's heart," The president spat back. Her cabal all just looked at each other, not knowing what to make of things. Let me explain. As you all remember, there was a large incident at Island, where the main culprit, Wolfram, supposedly transformed into an enormous monstrous form. This form was initially believed to be a quirk, but later genetic analysis showed no signs of a quirk that extreme outside his original metal manipulation quirk and the muscle augmentation quirk believed to have been given to him by AFO. The president explained as she showed images caught at the island. Then how did he transform? The head of budgeting asked. According to the source of our information, he underwent a process called monsterization, in which the negative emotions within the human heart cause physiological changes. She explained. Who was the source of this information, ma'am? The head of heroic education asked. A man from another world. The president replied with absolute seriousness. Ma'am, you must be joking, right? I mean, parallel worlds are just a theory, right? The head of internal affairs asked. This is no joke. The story was corroborated by 5 different people, including one of our heroes. The president replied with, oh, seriousness. The individual in question was called Blast, a hero from another world, who had come to ours to warn us apparently. He appeared just after the Kamino incident to Detective Tsukachi, All Might, Nizu, Gran Torino, and Maruko, and told them of a great danger. She continued as her cabal listened intently. According to this hero, what happened to both Wolfram and AFO was common on his world. People could become monsters, be sacrificing their humanity for power through negative emotion, and it won't stop with them. Hundreds of people and animals could potentially be turning into monsters as we speak. She finished as her cabal all looked at one another. Okay then, yes, say that this is all true, and monsters are going to start appearing. What do we do about them? One of the heads asked. According to this Blast individual, the heroes of the other world killed the monsters as no prison in that world could hold them. I propose we do the same. MDM president explained, causing a slight outcry. Are you crazy? Do you know what will happen if we tell the populace that there are literal monsters trying to kill them? We'll go right back to the early days of quirks with mobs of people slaughtering innocent mutants. We can't the CRC gain a foothold again. The head of statistical research states. I understand that, which is why I propose we come up with a new name for the monsters. MDM president replied. How about mysterious being? It sounds inexplicable and dangerous, and we can use it label any mutants who get a bit too uppity. One of the heads suggests. Brilliant. All for all opposed, all right, we're implementing it. The president states as she asks for everyone to cast a vote, which ended up unanimous. Now then, on to the next item of discussion. What to tell the public? The president stated. So just how powerful are these mysterious beings? One of the heads asked. According to Blast, his world had an organization similar to our own called the Hero Association, which designated monsters into categories from wolf level to tiger level, demon level to dragon level to god level, with wolf levels being dangers to small groups of people up to god levels being threats to all humanity. Though I should note Blast's world lacks quirks, and only a selected number have actual power. The president replied in explanation. If a bunch of quirkless people can take on these mysterious beings, then I'm certain our heroes could crush them. One of the heads states as they all agree. Indeed, though I still think these mysterious beings can be a useful move for our heroes. Fighting villains can be dangerous if they make an appeal of Sue. But if our heroes are fighting actual humanist monsters, then we can simply brush it under the rug. The president explains as the cabal all get excited. The cabal then all made plans on how best to manipulate the monster situation in a way that would benefit them. After that, they had one last item to deal with. Now then, what is to be done about Izuku Midoriya? The president asked as the cabal all scowled. They all dislikes the boy for one reason or another. He'd insulted them at the sports festival and called them out. He'd made their best heroes look like amateurs by effortlessly capturing Stain and Overhaul, as well as besting several Nomu, Wolfram, and AFO with help. And some of the cabal had began to suspect he was trained in the other world or came from it, and could undermine their image of heroes needing powerful quirks. The young man was a threat to their status quo and needed to be removed from the picture. Later, after the meeting, MDM President, Sir Nitai is here to see you as requested. Came the voice of her personal secretary over her intercom. Good. Send him in. She replied as she sat down. The doors then opened. You wanted to see me, MDM President? The hero asked as he sat down. Yes, Nightai. Though knowing you, you probably already know what I'm going to ask of you. She replied. I do, and it's something I endorse, yet vehemently oppose. Nightai replied as he removed his glasses and activated his quirk on the president. Oh, the horrors he foresaw. Read Estro's office. So, that's the report. Curious states as she takes a seat. Thank you, Curious. I can always count on you for information. Redestro complimented as he readjusted himself. His entire cabinet was attending this meeting, as they always did whenever Curious brought new information from her spies in the HPSC. However, this time, things were unique. So, they believe literal monsters are going to start attacking, huh? Sounds like a bunch of desperate propaganda to me. Trumpet states with a cocky smile. I'm not too sure about that, Trumpet. I've hacked their systems, plus looked into the people who did the tests. According to the data, these monsters are real. Mr. Skeptic explained as he remained hunched over his laptop. I have to agree. According to my little spy in the league, that transformation this AFO fellow pulled off wasn't something he had access to prior to that night. Curios explained. What does it even matter? Monster, villain, or hero, none can stand against the righteous power of Meta Liberation Army and our noble goals. Geeton interjects confidently. Well said, my dear Geeton. However, as usual, we must be cautious. Curious, keep me updated on your spy's progress in the league and gathered information. Mr. Skeptic, I want you to continue gathering information on these monsters. We may need it. Geeton, Trumpet, you both continue to train the militia. I want them ready for anything. Redestro orders as his subordinates all stand to salute him. Yes, sir. They all reply simultaneously. After the meeting. Excellent. Those fold at the HPSC are digging their own graves even faster. Please, monsters. What moron would ever fall for that? Redestro thought to himself as he looked out his office window at the expanse of the city of Daika. Though, should the worst happen, I'm confident I could kill a dragon level if need be. All for my righteous and glorious revolution. He thought himself as he clenched his fist with a cocky smile. Plus point. It had been an entire month since class. 1A had been told of the existence of monsters, but that wasn't the main problem they were heading towards. No, because today, they had their licensing exam, while most were, in which they would have the opportunity to prove their mettle and earn the right to call themselves pro-heroes, except for Melissa, who despite being part of 1A still needed to pass a few other tests to participate in a licensing exam. Many were nervous, others, however, not so much. Come on, you guys, we can't be intimidated by this. Kirishima asked as he enthusiastically tried to pep up his classmates. He's right, you know. Compared to everything we've been through together, this should be a doddle. Izuku added with his signature smile. That's easy for you to say, Mr. Invincible. You're the strongest guy here. Mineta replied nervously as he readjusted his bowl. No, they're both right. Momo interjected. We've all faced far worse than this, and with what we know is on the horizon, we'll face even worse. We're more than capable of making sure everyone passes the exam. Who's with me? Momo continued as she rallied her classmates. Hell yeah, Yamamo, everyone together now plus. Kirishima replied as his enthusiasm rose. Ultra, a tall and muscular student wearing the black cap of UA's eternal rival, Shiketsu Academy, somehow managed to drown out everyone else's cry of their school motto. The students of 1A looked confused at his sudden appearance. Yurashi, I've told you 1,000,000,000 times. It's rude to intrude on another group's huddle, came a stern voice from another student in a Shiketsu hat. Damn it, you're right. My apologies, the now named Yurashi replied loudly. Crack. Before then smashing his forehead into the concrete to bow. Christ, and I thought Kirishima was enthusiastic. Jiro exclaimed. She's right, Kiri. This guy's stealing your manly thunder. You gonna let that stand? Mina asked as she teased her best friend. Never, Kirishima replied as he too prepared to slam his forehead into the concrete, thankfully being stopped by Sato and Siro. Hey, you good buddy? Izuku asked the man who had just tried to bash his brains out. Hell yeah, I'm all good, sorry, I've always loved UA, so now I'm thrilled to be competing alongside its students today, Yurashi explained as BLD began to trail down his forehead and onto his enormous grin. Right, well anyway, it's nice to meet you, Yurashi. I'm Midoriya. Izuku replied as he offered a handshake. Wait, Midoriya? As in the same guy who beat Stain? The guy who fought that villain on Eye Island with All Might? The same guy who defeated that monster at Kamino? That Midoriya? Yurashi asked enthusiastically, getting closer with each question. Yeah, that's me. Izuku replied awkwardly, before Yurashi grabbed his hands and looked him in the eyes with sparkles in his. I'm your biggest fan, dude, you're such badass, hot-blooded hero, Yurashi exclaimed as he brought their faces even closer. You sure you're just a fan? You appear to be trying to kiss me? Izuku thought to himself as he tried to pull away. Thanks, Yurashi. That's great, dude. Izuku replied awkwardly. OF. And then Yurashi hugged him. It's such an honor to meet you, bro, Yurashi cried out as he hugged Izuku. An honor to meet you too? Izuku replied, not knowing what to say. Oh right. Hey Kami, I found him, Yurashi cried out as he released Izuku. Then, a girl with fawn hair, in a skin-tight catsuit that was unzipped to reveal her abundant ampleness, approached the group. Hey fam, name's Kami. Thought you were totes rad, and wanted you have this. The woman named Kami said as she reached into her abundant ampleness to pull out a piece of paper and handed it to Izuku, much to the girl's shock and Minetta's jealousy. #laters y'all, she said before leaving. The class then all collectively stood there silently, trying to process what had just happened. Well then, that happened. Izuku stated as he pocketed the phone number. Ain't she great? Yurashi asked with a smile. Yeah, she's great. Izuku replied, not knowing what to say. Someone please save me from this awkward situation. Izuku silently begged. Midoriya, Aizawa asked me to tell you to wrap this up. Todoroki interrupted, unknowingly saving Izuku. Thanks, Todoroki. Izuku replied as he turned to speak with Yurashi, who now looked angry. So, you're here too then, Todoroki? Yurashi asked in a cold tone of voice. Yes, why wouldn't I be? Todoroki asked, confused. Of course that would be your answer. Yurashi replied as he turned and left. What was that about? Izuku asked. He was one of the other recommendation test candidates for UA. We competed together and B got a high score, but decided to not accept the admission. Todoroki explained. Why would he do that? Izuku asked. Because of me. Todoroki replied before walking away, leaving Izuku confused. Alright you lot, enough stalling, it's time for. Aizawa stated before stopping and looking in a specific direction, before then looking directly at Izuku and looking him in the eyes. I'll exempt you and your entire class from homework for the entire semester if you can get me away from this place. He bargained in a rather panicked tone. So what's going on? You're acting weirder than usual. Izuku replies as the class looks okay in confusion. Damn it, it's too late. My only hope to hide myself. Aizawa continues as he tries to use Shoji as a wall. Sensei, what is going on? Ida asked. Eraser marry me, came a voice far too cheerful for anyone who would be into Aizawa should have. The class looked over to see a woman with sea foam green hair in an orange bandana, a skin-tight charcoal top, green and orange striped bubbled clown shorts, orange gloves with bulky metal bracers, and black boots. Go away, you she-devil, Aizawa cried out from behind Shoji. Playing hard to get again, are we? The woman asked, as she jumped over Shoji to get at Aizawa. Leave me alone, you relentlessly cheerful monster, he carried out as he ran. But Eraser honey, you know we're destined to be together, the woman cried out as she chased him. What's going on? Who was that woman? Sue asked. It's Ms. Joke, a teacher at Ketsubutsu University. As for why she's acting like a lovesick schoolgirl around Aizawa of all people, I have no idea. Izuku explained as he and his class watched their teacher desperately try to avoid the heroine's advances. Hey guys, we're gonna be late if we wait any longer. Kaminari points out as he shows them his watch. Then it appears to be that we are at a crossroads. We can either risk being late by saving our teacher, or we can accept he's made heroic sacrifice so we can be on time. Momo explains with a smile. The class all then looked at one another, shared a smile, and turned to walk towards their future. All of you get back here, or you're expelled, Aizawa cried out, as Joke tackled him. Yeah, we're sure, sir, Izuku replied dismissively. Don't worry, sir, we'll be back in a couple hours. Jiro added with a grin. Don't do anything too perverted with your lady friend whilst we're gone. Mineta jeered as a few others chuckled. DMN you all, I don't deserve this. Aizawa thinks to himself as he Joke hugs him and rubs their faces together lovingly. Third-person POV. After Ditch leaving Aizawa to his fate, and avoiding a guy who looked like Izuku but had a plastic smile on his face, the students were all funneled into the overly enormous stadium. Seriously, why was the stadium so huge? The licensing exam is only held twice a year, and the Olympics are held in Tokyo. No sport requires a stadium this enormous, and the exam doesn't allow spectators beyond teachers and officials, so why did it have thousands of seats? Overcompensation on the HPSC's parts? Probably. Moving on swiftly from that thought process, the students were all lined up in blocks representing their respective universities, as a guy who looked even sleepier than Aizawa stepped up to a podium. He introduced himself as Yakomuro Mera, and that he'd be the main proctor for the exam. He then gave a general spiel about the difficulties of being heroes and its importance in society. Then, finally, he gave an explanation on what was going to happen. He explained that they'd be undergoing 3 hero tests to determine whether or not they'd be allocated a provisional license. Then came the scary bit. He explained that out of the 1,540 students present, only 5% would be allowed to pass. A mere 77 would pass today. That caused a few faces to pale as it meant that only 3 full classes could pass with an additional 17 members of another full class. Izuku theorized that this was because of both the destruction of Kamino and the looming threat of the League and AFO, as well as the inevitable threat of monsters he'd had Tsukachi tell the HPSC about. Pushing those thoughts aside for now as Mera explained the first event. Several people in suits and sunglasses walked throughout the student columns and handed out strange discs. Mera explained that these were weak point discs that would only activate when hit by a proprietary tech ball. He ordered the students to affix 3 discs to their customs, but not in areas such as the soles and armpits, as that was considered cheating. If all 3 discs were hit, the student would be disqualified and have to take remedial courses to get their license. He then ordered them all to walk to different areas of the room they were all in. They were then all told good luck, as the roof opened above each class and the floors began rising. Izuku POV. As Izuku and his class took stock of their surroundings, he immediately noticed that they were at a disadvantage as they were in a crater with only a few means of exiting. But that wasn't their most immediate concern. No, the more pressing matter was the small army of other students who had occupied the rim of the crater, all looking at his class like easy prey. Looks like I was right on the money. Izuku muttered to himself as he and his class prepared themselves. All right, you guys. Here they come, Izuku cried out as the other students all threw their ball. Todoroki, Tokoyami. Now Izuku cried out as both his classmates activated their quirks, shielding the class with a dome of ice and darkness. You guys all remember the plan, right? He asked as his classmates all nodded. Good. Now then, drop the barrier, Izuku announced. As soon as the dome dropped, he sprang into action, using Water Stream Rock's smashing fist to deflect a wave of ball back at their throwers. As a result of this action, most of the attackers had 1 to 2 of their discs hit, causing a large commotion, which Izuku took advantage of. He unleashed his killing intent in all directions, a massive wave of pressure that caused a few other participants to pass out from the aura. Thankfully, his classmates were prepared. Flashback. So then, Midori, why'd you call us all here? Mina asked as the class stood in one of the gymnasiums. Because I'm going to teach you all about aura, better known as killing intent. Izuku explained. Wait, killing intent? That doesn't sound very manly, dude. Kirishima pointed out. Relax, Karibro, it's just name. It essentially means I'm going to teach you how to weaponize your soul. Izuku explained, causing his class to do a double take. Weaponize our soul? What are you on about, dude? Kaminari asked. I thinks it's better for me to just show you. Izuku stayed as he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He then suddenly stiffened and opened his eyes, causing his aura to envelop his classmates. The sudden weight that struck his classmates brought most of them to their knees, whilst those with weaker wills like Mineta and Aoyama passed out. Only Kirishima, Todoroki, and Momo remained standing out of sheer willpower, but even then they were still heavily sweating. After 10 seconds, Izuku retracted his aura, and his class began to slowly recover. That was awful. Shiro breathed as he caught his breath. You said it. I never want to go through that again. Ochiko added as she got to her feet, whilst her knees wobbled. You're going to teach us how to do that? Todoroki asked as he took deep breaths. Exactly. I'm going to teach you how to output your aura for offensive purposes like what I just showed, and defensive purposes to resist such attacks. Now wake the others up, we've got some training to do. Izuku replies as he pointed to the class members who had fallen unconscious. You guys ready? He asked as the class nodded. Good. First of, You need to open the gate to your soul, he instructed. End of flashback. The class had all output their own auras to act as defensive barrier against Izuku's. Some, like Momo, Achiko, and Kirishima, had full barriers that could fully resist it, whilst the rest only had basic barriers to resist falling unconscious. After checking to make sure his friends weren't unconscious, he leapt at their assailants and swiftly outed a few of them who were either unconscious or disoriented, earring him a spit in the next round. All right, you guys, you know what to do. Izuku called out as several balls tried to hit him. Right, the class all chanted in unison as they split into various groups to divide their enemy's attention. Momo POV. As the class split, Momo took her assigned squad to go after their target. Prior to the exam, the class had done preliminary research on all the other universities as they knew that as a result of the sports festival their own abilities weren't secret. The class had stumbled across a few different opponents who they realized would be an issue if they weren't taken care of. One such individual was a student named Psycho Intelli, whose quirk made her smarter whenever she drank tea a certain way. Momo had been given the job of assembling a team and taking her and her clique out. Prior to the exam, Momo had convinced, aka bribed, May with rare material to hack Intelli's computer and learn what she knew. Apparently she knew a lot, like enough to counter almost everyone in 1A, but Momo immediately began formulating a strategy to counter Intelli's counters. She's made a team to defeat Intelli consisting of herself, Jiro, Sue, and Shoji. They tracked Intelli's group using Shoji and Jiro's heightened senses to a mock skyscraper. Upon entering, Momo creates several devices to detect the presence of anything out the ordinary. The ambient temperature is rather low, lower than it should be. Guess she saw who was coming after her. Momo explained as she looked at Sue. Good thing Hatsum put tap microheater in my suit. If it got too cold, I would have eventually fallen asleep. Sue stated as they ascended the building. As they did, however, they encountered many traps along the way. Glue traps, stun grenades, tasers, and more. Guess one of her friends must have quirk like yours, Yamamo. Shoji pointed out. Not likely. This must be Lily Harasawa. She's a member of Intelli's clique and her quirk lets her store a vast number of things on her body. Guess she stocked up on equipment to create countermeasures and traps. Momo explained as she recalled the intel she'd bribed May for. Even knowing that, though, it means we likely are going to have to be careful with all these traps hidden around. Jiro pointed out. We could do that. Or I could do this. Momo replied as she flexed and electrical energy began emitting from her. Whoa, is that the new application of your quirk you discovered? Tuss asked. Momo had told her classmates that she'd unlocked a new application of her quirk that let her rapidly burn calories to increase her physical abilities for a short time, and the lightning was just a byproduct of the rapid energy burn. Yup, Momo replied as she prepared herself. She took a runner's stance. Then she shot off like bullet, slamming into each wall and breaking all the traps with sheer brute force. Ever since the training camp, she's been hard at work to increase her body's tolerance to OFA, and with Izuku's help and hellish training, she's risen from less than 10% to a constant 20% and an upper limit of 32%. Heck yeah, Momo. You rock, Jiro cried out as she threw up some horns, causing Momo to blush. Then you, Jiro. Now then, let's keep moving. Momo responded as the team resumed their search. As the team ascended the stairs to where Intelli was located, they all suddenly began to feel paranoid and fearful, jumping at things that they shouldn't be. What's going on? Sue asked fearfully. I don't know, but I feel anxious, and there's this ringing in my ears. Shoji replies as the group all stopped. Ringing, what are you all talking about? I feel fine. Jiro states as she looks at her teammates. It must be the earplugs May made for you. Momo points out. Jiro then remembered she'd put those on prior to exam due to all the noise. She'd asked Hatsum to make them because she was tired of going to Recovery Girl every time things got loud. As she took them out, she was immediately floored by the noise. Holy SHD, what is wait, I know what this is, it's infrasound. Jiro explained as she stood back up. Infrasound, what's that? Sue asked. It's a type of low-frequency noise that affects the human subconsciousness, inducing fear and awe, as well as potential nausea and blurry vision. My dad taught me about it when he was explaining frequencies to me when I was younger. Jiro explained. So then, how do we counter it, with earplugs? Shoji asked. No, If Momo made earplugs, then we'd be blind to other traps that could be caught with sound. I have better idea. Jiro responded as she took a deep breath and discuses intently on the rhythm and frequency of her heartbeat. I hope this works. Jiro thinks to herself as she focuses her vibrations through her hands and jacks. Flashback. You want to be stronger? Izuku asked. That's right, dude. Strong like you. Jiro replies. Why? Izuku asks. What do you mean, why? To be a better hero. Jiro responds angrily. No. Why do you want to be strong? What reason motivates you? Izuku explains, causing Jiro to stumble. Because I'm weak. Look at me. I've got barely any muscle. My quirk isn't flashy or strong, and I've got no technique. Jiro explains. Kirishima's got no technique or flash, and yet he's not asking me to train him. So what's the real reason? Izuku states as he crosses his arms. Because I want to be strong for Momo. Because I want to keep her safe. Jiro confesses as she awkwardly like away. Congratulations, Jiro. You've proven to have enough courage to admit your feelings to yourself. Izuku states as he places a hand on her shoulder. Does that mean you'll train me to stronger like you then? She asks. I can't teach you to be strong like me, because you're not me. Izuku states, causing Jiro's expression to sadden. But I can teach you to be strong in your own way, to be the strongest Kyukujiro you can possibly be. Izuku continues as Jiro smiles. Thanks, dude. You're a cool guy, Green. And I feel like I don't say that enough. Jiro redonda as she gives him a hug. No problem, Jiro. Now prepare yourself. One wrong move, and this technique could kill you. Izuku replies with some startling information. Wait, what? End of flashback. What Izuku had taught her was one of his most dangerous martial arts, Exploding Heart Release Fist, a style that utilized the user's heart pulse explosive energy in synchronicity with the impact of their own punches, allowing the user to exceed their normal physical limitations due to the surge of adrenaline. However, Izuku had instructed her not just to mimic him, but evolve the technique to fit her own abilities. To that end, she'd created her own style. Songstress Heartstring Counter Vibration Fist. She focused this technique through her jacks, creating a counter frequency to the infrasound, and then sent it through her sound amplifiers to encompass her friends in a counter wave dome. You guys all right? She asked. Yeah, I'm good. Shoji replied as Tsu gave her a thumbs up. The two of them then went on ahead as Jiro helped Momo. Good job, Jiro. I'm proud of you. Momo stated as she gave Jiro a quick kiss as they rejoined the others. Intelli hiding spot. You guys think they're all out cold? One of Intelli's clique asked. Of course they are, my dear. Sips tea, everything has gone exactly as planned. Intelli states as she rises from her seat. Now then, ladies, shall go and earn our licenses? Intelli asks as her clique all prepare themselves. The door opens and, hey Beach. Jiro greets as she immediately outs Intelli. Well, what? Intelli asks as she sees her other friends get outed. But how? I had counters for everyone, even Izuku Midoriya. She states in utter confusion. You might be smarter than the average bear, but you're never going to get far by relying on cold logic. Sometime you need some street smarts. Jiro replies with a smug face as Intelli accepts her defeat. Third-person POV. Meanwhile, as Momo's team was taking care of Intelli, other squads of 1A were taking on other students. Toki was helping Kaminari and Kirishima with a guy whose quirk turned people into meat wards using his own detracted flesh. Kaminari defended himself using a constant flow of electricity which acted as armor, and Toki used her water streams. Meanwhile, Kirishima did what he did best, carve forward with no regard for his own safety. In the end, the trio defeated the weird student as Kirishima used an altered version of the tank top tackle that Izuku showed him. Todoroki encountered a team of ninja-themed students, but the battle shifted when Hagakure and Ida helped out using the ninja techniques Izuku copied from Flashy Flash. Whilst the two of them were nowhere near as fast as the S-Class ninja, they were both much faster than the competition. That, along with Todoroki's overwhelming power, guarantee their success. Yururika was also going well with her new application of her quirk to decrease gravity at a distance, causing lines of students to float, and giving Aoyama a target range to knock them down. There was a slight hiccup, however, when that Kami girl tried to jump them, but she wasn't in any way prepared for Yururika, whose sheer determination in conjunction with her training and killing intent let her knock the girl out without even trying. Elsewhere, Tokoyami and Dark Shadow were tag-teaming one another as they took on dozens of students on their own. Izuku had instilled in them the knowledge that each was a separate entity and that they could easily take advantage of that and have each other's backs. Aizawa POV. Meanwhile, as the students of 1A were dominating the competition, Aizawa was facing his own challenges. "An NGGH, get off me," Aizawa demanded as he tore to escape Joke's clutches. "Not happening, Zawa baby. I'm here to stay," Joke replies as she hugged him tighter. The two had been in this state ever since Aizawa's class had abandoned him to become a body pillow for the heroine. But eventually they did actually start talking to each other, instead of complaining and whispering sweet nothings. "So how do you think your class will fare, considering the UA crush and all?" Joke asked. "Judging from the fact that 17 of them have already passed, you tell me." Aizawa replies smugly as Joke looked at the scoreboard. "Holy, how the hell are they so tough? Have you actually begun training your students? And as a matter of fact, did you tell them about the crush?" Joke asked. "The fact that you even had to ask me those questions shows just how incompatible we are," Aizawa states as he tries to pull away again, but to no avail. "But if you must know, Midoriya, aka Problem Child, had been running them ragged to get ready for the future, and it was also him who predicted the crush," Aizawa explained as Joke's arms tightened around him like an anaconda. "What kind of future necessitates that kind of power?" Joke asked as she saw Tokoyami unleash his Dark Shadow and a large group of helpless victims. "The type I can't tell you about," Aizawa replied as the memory of the monsters surged in his mind. "Oh, ominous. You sure you can't spill a drop of tea for your future wife?" she asked with a beaming smile. "No, if you're so desperate to know what's coming. Then in a few days the commission will be making an announcement about it. Also, the day you become my wife is the day I get my butt kicked by a dog." Aizawa replied, hoping he'd picked an absurd enough metaphor. "Well, guess I'll have to wait until then." In the meantime, Cuddles Joke replies as she redoubled her efforts to impart love onto Aizawa. "Girl, I hate you." Aizawa ummed. "Da, I love you too, Zawa baby." Joke replied as she gave him a peck on the cheek. Intermediate break. After the set number of students had all passed, they were all given a 40-minute break to rest as the people in charge prepared the next test. As the universities all intermingled, Izuku saw a number of them all glaring at him. It was like he'd crushed their friends' dreams or something. Oh well. Surprisingly, he did meet one friendly face. A young man named Yoshindo, who looked like a near-carbon copy of itself frighteningly enough, had approached him to greet him and shake his hand. However, his friendly gesture and tone of voice beset a man with malicious intent, and Izuku could easily sense it. The lookalike didn't like him, but was making a considerable effort to hide it. Izuku felt like calling the guy out on his aura, but felt it was unnecessary. Shindo was only on the level of a mid-C-class hero and posed no real threat to Izuku besides perhaps identity theft, and he figured Shindo wasn't the type to impersonate others. After that little encounter, not much of note occurred until only 5 minutes remained. "Man, I'm pumped. That was such an amazing display of heroic passion. That's the kind of hot-blooded heroism I aspire to," Yurashi stated as he invaded Ida's personal space. Why yes. Thank you for the compliment. I too strive to be passionate in my heroics." Ida replied, not knowing how to safely respond to the guy who, during the exam, used his wind quirk to take out over 200 students in one go. "At this point, I think he's your long-lost cousin or something, Kiri." Mina joked to her brother from another mother. "Man, I'm really starting to regret turning down a spot at you. Being in class with such incredible people would be amazing," Yurashi announced vehemently. "Why'd you ditch the application then, bro? You're super awesome and powerful, and you're a manly man through and through. So why'd you turn it down?" Kirishima asked as she slung his arm around Yurashi's neck in a move of broness. Yurashi's face then went dark as he responded, and pointed towards Todoroki. "Because of him," he stated, darkly catching Izuku's attention. "What's your issue with Shoto?" Izuku asked in a voice that the class recognized as the one he reserved for talking to villains. Should we step in, or something? I mean, I know Midori wouldn't sabotage us, but..." Hagakure said silently. "No, just have faith in Izuku." Achiko staged as she looked at her friend. Due to her highly attuned sense with auras, she could tell he wasn't actually angry, and this had faulty, he wouldn't do anything crazy. "When I met him at the UA exam, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I thought that his outward disposition was due to pressure, but Todoroki dismissed me with the same cold tone and eyes that his father gave me. Urashi explained. You met my father? Todoroki asked. I love heroes, always have. I love the passion, the hot-bloodedness, the selflessness of heroes. But, you see, when I was younger, I thought Endeavor was the most passionate and hot-blooded of them all. I had all his merchandise, his posters, his action figures, his crappy cereal, all of it. But I didn't have an autograph. Then, one day, I met him. It was after a fight with a villain and he was leaving scene, and I run up to him with my mint and box Endeavor action figure. Urashi explained in great detail. You want to know what your dad did? He asked, and Shoto just looked down in shame. He practically bowled me over, and didn't even register my presence until I hit the ground. Then, I saw his eyes. He was cold and uncaring, nothing like I thought he was. So when I saw your eyes looking the exact same, I rescinded my application. Urashi finished. That's dumb. Izuku stated bluntly. Several of his classmates still nearly choked as he said it. What? Urashi asked. That's dumb. Shoto's only just learning how to be a normal person, socially speaking. I won't deny he wasn't rude to you. Heck, he was rude to all of us when we met him. But he has his reasons. Shoto was isolated from his own siblings by an power-hungry parent. He's one of the most socially inept people I know, if not the most. Izuku explained as Shoto listened intently. What? Is that true? Urashi asked Shoto. Shoto then just nodded. What have I am such a moron slam, Urashi replied as he slammed his head into the concrete again. I selfishly only bought about things from my perspective and blamed you for your father's sins. But I never stopped to think about your side, and what it must be like to live with him. I'm so sorry, Urashi continued as he bowed in apology. Shoto then knelt down. You don't need to apologize, Urashi, he stated as Urashi looked up at him with some BLD flowing from his forehead. The truth is you were right to judge me back then. I was just like my father. In fact, looking back on my past interactions, the only difference between us was the temperature of our quirks. Shoto continued as he smiled at the wind user. But I'm not like that anymore. I don't care about my father's expectations for me. I don't care about his thoughts or feelings, nor do I care about his obsession with empty titles. But what I do care about is being a good hero. So then, let's start over. Hi, my name's Shoto Todoroki. What's yours? Shoto explained as he reached out his hand with a smile he'd been practicing in the mirror. In response, Urashi took his hand with a smile. Hey Todoroki, name's Inesa Urashi. But you just call me Inesa, he replied as he stood up. It's nice to meet you, Inesa. Please, call me Shoto. Shoto replied as the two smiled at one another. I'm proud of you, Shoto. You've really grown since the sports festival. Izuku thought to himself as he watched the two of them get along. So, you guys all good now? Kaminari asked as Urashi and Shoto looked at one another with smiles. Yes, Kaminari, we're all good now. Shoto replied with an awkward thumbs up. Good, 'cause I think the next event's about to kaboom kick off. Kaminari explained as he was interrupted by an explosion. Izuku POV. Izuku and all his classmates, along with all the other students who passed the first exam, quickly ran to the edge of the break area, only to see the vast mock buildings that dotted the arena being leveled by explosives. Mera then spoke over the intercom to explain what the hell was going on. The next test would be search and rescue. The buildings would simulate a devastated city, and the fine folks from the Help Us company would play the part of the injured civilians and proctors. Every civilian saved counted as a point towards either the individual or group who rescued them, and points would be deducted for unheroic behavior. Alright then, seems easy enough. Just gotta rescue a few people and make sure to be nice about it. Izuku thought to himself as the horn signaled the start of the exam. Immediately, Izuku and his friends rushed towards the nearest collapsed building and began searching for survivors. Thanks to his enhanced senses, finding the civilians was easy, and his superhuman physique made unearthing them from the rubble a breeze. The tricky part, however, was getting the people to listen to him. Thankfully, he'd been developing a technique for just such an occasion. Flashback. About a week prior to the exam, Izuku had been roped into entertaining guests. Kota had returned to hang out again, but the majority of the WWPC was absent, save for Pixie Bob. Apparently, the rest of the WWPC were busy with one thing or another, and Kota was desperate to see his big bro again, so Pixie Bob had relented and brought him to see Izuku. Not that I don't mind the company, but why are you here? You know I have an exam in less than a week, right? Izuku asked Kota. Yeah, I know, it's just the way you train is really cool, and I wanted to watch. Kota explained bashfully. Really? Okay then. Izuku replied with a smile as Kota beamed. I'll show off a few techniques, and then we can go get ice cream together. That sound good to you? Izuku asked as Kota nodded his head enthusiastically, and Pixie Bob gave a thumbs up before returning to her phone. All right then, showtime. Izuku stated as he resumed his training. He performed a few techniques that were safe to use in the gymnasium and cracked a smile when he saw Kota trying to imitate him. For someone who tries to act all aloof, he's certainly a cute kid. Izuku thought to himself as he watched Kota fall over after trying to do a jump kick. You're so cool, big bro Izu. You fight real good. Kota stated excitedly. That might be true, but it takes more than combat skills to be an effective hero. Pixie Bob interjected for the first time that day. What did you mean, Pixie? Kota asked as Izuku listened. Saving people's bodies is easy. Any well-trained hero can do that. No, what a really good does is save people's hearts and minds. Pixie Bob explained as she looked at Izuku. You got any techniques for that, Greenie? She asked, hoping he'd say no. She'd only agreed to accompany Kota today to try and get close to the number 1 of 1A and his mature body. I do actually. Izuku replied, causing Pixie Bob to do a double take. Prove it, she stated. Okay. Izuku replied as he mentally prepared himself. This technique was an altered variation on the killing intent technique, which utilized the user's negative emotions and strength to overwhelm an opponent's willpower. However, Izuku thought that if the technique used negative emotions, what would happen if he used his positive emotions? I call this technique Hero's Soul. He stayed as he unleashed his aura, which was filled with his positive emotions. The wave hit Kota, and the effect was immediate, as the boy immediately felt like he was the safest person in the world just being in Izuku's vicinity. The air felt like a warm hug, and he felt happy. The aura also hit Pixie Bob, and well, as he retracted the aura he generated, Izuku suddenly noticed a pair of hungry eyes boring into him. He turned to see the previously uninterested Pixie Bob, blushing hard and breathing like a mad dog, with eyes half-lidded and filled with he didn't want to know what they were filled with. Definitely gonna need to work on that. I've already got a deranged woman lusting after me, and I don't need any more. Izuku thought to himself, as he grabbed Kota and ran before the heroine did something R-rated. End of flashback. Izuku released his new technique, and all the civilians who'd been whining and complaining about things all immediately shut up and felt safe. As for the other students who were caught in it, they felt emboldened and confident in their capabilities, and a sense of unity washed over them all. The students, who had all been competing moments ago, began working together like a well-oiled machine. This is going better than I could have hoped. A few more minutes of this will all have our licenses. Nothing can get in our way in. Izuku thought to himself, only to be cut off by kaboom! By an explosion. God damn it. Izuku finished his thoughts and dashed off towards the origin of the blast. Blast site. When Izuku arrived on the scene, he immediately accessed the situation and scanned the area. What he saw sent him into hunter mode. A large group of villains in identical costumes, all armed with arm cannon, were attacking the civilians. At the back was a larger figure in a modified version of the costume, who was clearly the leader. Do have some secret danger attraction quirk, cause at this point this is getting utterly ridiculous, Izuku angrily thought to himself as he launched himself at the gang of villains. Hero student, 11 o'clock, get high, one of the goons cried out, only to get docked in the jaw by Izuku's foot and launched several dozen meters. Oh, that doesn't bode well for us, does it? One of the other goons asks. You got that right, bad guys. Izuku replied as he looked at them with his killing intent leaking from him. Everyone get him, the leader cries out as he points at Izuku. Why, the HHG, the goons all cried out in unison as they attacked Izuku. BOM. Only for Izuku to tear into their lines with ruthless ferocity. He showed no mercy as he violently beat the SHD out of every goon who got even remotely close to him. He reflected their projectiles with ease. He threw them around like ragdolls, and he made them all look like fools. After a minute or so of relentless pounding, one of the goons tried to grapple Izuku, only to have his hand grabbed, his body twisted round, and his tibia and fibula broken with one kick. My leg, the grunt cries out in pain as Izuku snaps the bone like a twig. Whoa, 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 stop. You're going too far, the leader cried out as he rushed towards a confused Izuku. What? What do you mean too far? You're the ones who attacked this installation during the licensing exam. You made the bed. Now sleep in it, Izuku replies as he tossed the injured goon aside. No, you don't understand. We're part of the exam, the leader explained as he removed his helmet to reveal Gang Orca. Gang Orca? What the hell's going on? Izuku asked as his brain tried to straighten things out. As I just said, we are part of the exam. We're meant to simulate a sudden villain attack during rescue operations to tear how you guys would react in that situation. Gang Orca explained as Izuku immediately grasped the situation. Oh, wait. So that means that all the guys I just beat the hell out of? Izuku asked as he looked at the groaning bodies of the goons. Are all my sidekicks? Yes. Gang Orca replied in an exasperated tone. Oh, sorry. Izuku stated as he tried to smile his way out of the trouble he was likely in. Mera POV. Meanwhile, as Izuku was throwing goons around like ragdolls, Mera was lamenting his inability to make good decisions. Ever since the meeting with the president of the HPSC about the potential appearance of monsters, his already severe insomnia had been compounded by intense paranoia, meaning the longest he'd slept in the last month was 2 hours. What are those fools thinking? Trying to capitalize on literal monsters? And for what? A percentage increase in clearing fame? Mera laments as he observes the arena. But this wasn't his only reason for lamenting his life decisions, because he'd been given an impossible task by the president. He was tasked with finding dirt on Izuku Midoriya. Ever since Midoriya had shown up, the HPSC had been in a paranoid state. The higher-ups saw the quirkless boy as a threat to their precious status quo, which they'd been preserving for nearly a century. But now, here was a young man who challenged the view that heroes needed flashy quirks, or even a quirk in general, to be a hero. Initially, the HPSC believed the young man would either flunk out or be expelled within a month, but after the USJ incident, his name rapidly began popping up everywhere. The sports festival, the overhaul incident, the stain hunt, the Kiyoshi Mall attack, the campsite invasion, and even the Kamino incident. He'd been at all of them, and he'd shown time and time again to rival and even surpass the best heroes Japan had to offer. This naturally had a dozen members of the board wanting him out. But thankfully they had no idea how to get rid of the young man. Morons. Don't they know that maintaining a status quo is itself a form of regression? I mean, even if the kid had skeletons in his closet, he's way too valuable to just dispose off. Mera thinks to himself as H looks over Midoriya's record, which was squeaky clean. He watched as Izuku decimated the goons of Gang Orca, and it looked like something out of an anime. The young man was unstoppable. Those idiots really want to sabotage a hero prospect this skilled? The F is wrong with them? Mera asks himself as he writes something down. DM in those imbeciles on the board. I should have become a pianist like my mother encouraged. But no, I had to get a government job. He thinks to himself as the exam wraps up. Maybe I should start job hunting again. He whispers to himself as grabs the microphone. Woods. Meanwhile, crash. Jesus Christ, I know the ZYGT said these things were strong, but this? Torino thinks to himself as he runs from a group of monstrous Nomu with Tsukachi on his shoulder. The two of them had been leading a squad of officers and heroes to track down the League, as well as investigate rumors of a giant in the woods. Torino figured the giant was Gigantomachia, AFO's personal bodyguard, a multi-quirk giant with strength in the same ballpark of Nana back when she had OFA. But what the group found instead made their stomachs curl. They had indeed found Gigantomachia, or what was left of him. The giant had been mutilated and transformed into what seemed to be massive laboratory made of skin and organs. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what was currently chasing him, Tsukachi, and the remaining heroes and officers. A Noma that could speak. The thing has descended out of nowhere and ripped through a dozen heroes, all of whom were in the top 50, as well as the officers. Not only that, but what it said after flattening a few heroes sent chills up Torino's spine. You'll all be perfect sacrifices for my evolution, the Nomu had stayed as is held the head of a hero in its large hand. Torino deduced that not only was this thing a higher class of Nomu, but that it also undergone monsterization, and clearly it wasn't done evolving yet. God help us if the League can create an army of ever-evolving monsters. we'd all be dead within the day. Torino thought to himself as he ran as fast as he could. So, this was the end of part 13 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.